What's up and what's happening, TPE fam? We're back with another episode of the TPE Book Club, and we're continuing our conversation around Craig Groeschel's latest book, Think Ahead. My name is Alex Hill, and Giovanna Roach is here with us, and we're just continuing to go through this book. I'll tell you, Giovanna, I don't know about you, but I've really enjoyed studying the different concepts and principles, and whether it's something new or it's affirming something that we already knew, I definitely can appreciate the things that have been discussed here. And today we're going to be talking about I will be an influencer, and Giovanna's going to kick us off here with that commentary.
All right, and so if you he said we're studying Craig Groeschel's book, Think Ahead, his latest book. There's also a great workbook that goes along with it. You can purchase this on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, anywhere that you purchase books. And we're actually using the workbook a lot, I would think, when we're talking through this book, because there's a lot of really good questions and content in this book. And so we are on the fourth topic of the book. The first one, part one, was I will be ready. Part two was I will be devoted. Part three was I will be faithful. And we are on part four, and we're getting there, guys. We've been a little behind. Our personal lives, our real jobs is what we call them, have really kind of taken over. It was a busy month of May, but we're back at it, and we're going to be trying to put out some more episodes a little bit quicker so that you guys can stay up with the book. But this is actually my favorite part of this book so far. I will be an influencer. And I think the reason I really like this is, one, it's because it's part of my life mission statement, is to be a person of influence. And so I think that's key. But I really like the definition of influence that I looked up on the internet. I kind of looked through the book a little bit and kind of talked about, like, what is influence? What does it mean to be an influencer? And influence is defined as the capacity to have an effect on the character, development, or behavior of someone or something, or the effect itself. And I think this is key because as individuals, we influence people either positively or negatively. We all have people in our lives that we influence. I'm going to talk about those people here in a little bit. But I wanted to kick this to Alex, and I think this is why, is Alex started TPE several years ago. And he did what was called the daily dose. And so he'll tell you a little bit more about it, but like, he was on every single day on YouTube and Instagram or wherever you view this content. He was on every day, and he was putting a blog out there. So he was being a person of influence, or an influencer is what I'll call it, because we all have people that we follow, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Like, there's actually tons of people out there that get paid to be influencers. And so I kind of want Alex to tell you a little bit about his journey of why he started TPE and why influence is so important to him, and maybe just a little bit about the daily dose and like how it's changed over the last couple of years.
Well, I'll just start off by saying this. The word influence kind of became a buzzword for me, or a word of gravity, when I started studying John Maxwell. John Maxwell says that leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And that was something that really stuck with me. And before I heard that, I was overcomplicating what leadership meant, what the definition of it was. But when I heard John Maxwell say that definition in that way, it just really kind of drove it home for me. And speaking of John Maxwell, I really liked how he communicated. I felt like he influenced our teams from afar. Every time, Chick-fil-A brought him in to talk on the big stage at the seminar, or what's now called Next, I was always tuned in. And I just love the way that he had an ability to take a concept of leadership and make it palatable to whoever was listening. And I told myself, I said, man, I want to try to strive to have that level of influence. That's really what the seed of what this business that we're participating in was kind of built off of. I said, there's a song, and I'm not gonna really say the song, but there's a verse in the song that says conversation rules a nation. And I feel like that's really an extreme version of being the best version of a communicator and how well you can get your point across and influence people to try to do the things that you deem that are right and that you deem are valuable. So Giovanna mentioned a daily dose. So I told myself the one thing that I'm going to do to be able to be good at communicating on this microphone or feeling comfortable talking is getting the reps in. I'll tell you, if you go back and look at some of the early stuff, I was terrible. You might still think I'm terrible now if you listen to this now, but I'm joking there. I think I'm much better than I was before, and that's because I got hyper focused on wanting to be the best influencer I can be in the area of leadership. I think for me, the why was compelling. I felt like everybody had the ability to be a leader. They just needed to be influenced to know that they could lead. And so that was really what spearheaded my journey in wanting to live a life of influence. And I love the fact that you said that that's your life statement, because I think that's what we all ought to want to be, some level of influence. And now I think the things that Alex or the things that Giovanna might want to influence people to be might be different from yours, but your life has a story, and you need to, in my mind, it's up to you to determine or figure out what that is and influence people through those things. And so that's why we've started the TPE. The pivot experience is to influence people to pivot into their next. Everything that we do is focused around the area of influence.
It's funny that you talked about this, and I'm going to kind of go back to our last session with this book. And we talked about risk taking. And I think that was a really big risk for you. Like, what if people don't like my content? What if I get bad reviews? What if their comments are bad? That was a super big risk. And I think that's something that you've even like challenged me to do better. Like, I'm really comfortable in this setting. Like, if you put me on a podcast or with somebody else and like we're throwing questions at each other, or, like I'm pretty like, I actually like doing this. Like, it's fun, right? But Alex, he challenges me to make content like where I'm just speaking, out in the open to people, which is what he did on the Daily Dose. And I'm like, it's so awkward. Like, people don't even care about what I have to say. Like, Alex, I look funny. Like, I don't, and I'm like, it's funny that we can like think back on the last one is like, hey, that's just a risk of like, if being a person of influence, you got to take risk. Like, there might be that one thing that you say that stands out to somebody that can change their life. Like, I've heard people say that, like, that one conversation you had with somebody who was even about to take their own life, and you changed their whole trajectory. And so you have the power. Like, that, I almost just got goosebumps when I said that. Like, you have the power to change people, but you got to take the risk, and you have to realize that like you can be a person of influence. What you have to say is valuable, point blank. What you have to say and what you have to give is valuable. And we're influencing others whether we think we are or not. And like I had a list on my sheet that I'm kind of like reference when I look at this book. It's like, we influence our family, we influence our business, we influence our church. I put on here, I was like, I was a soccer coach. Like, I'm influencing these 10 young boys. We influence our family, our friends. Like, we are a person of influence, and what you say and what you do is going to either influence people to be a better version of themselves or to be a worse version of themselves. And I really think that everybody out there wants to push others to be the best version of themselves. So I really like, I kind of commend you on that. Like, Alex, like, you took a leap, but like you took a risk because like you said, leadership is influence, right? Nothing more, nothing less. That's what John Maxwell says. And I'm a big John Maxwell fan, by the way. Like, I think he was the first person that like pushed me to want to be a better leader. And so like, I'm a big fan of his, and that like tons of his content is based on that phrase alone. Leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And so because you wanted to be a person of influence, like, you took a leap of faith, a risk of saying, people might not like what I have to say. People might think it's dumb, or they might make bad comments, or they might dislike my YouTube channel. But at the end of the day, like, you're called to be somebody of influence. And like, I think that to me is like, wow, like, you took a leap of faith to be say, hey, I want to be somebody who influences. And I think we've done that in this business. Like, Sometimes we don't feel qualified enough or capable enough, or that, like that imposter syndrome we talked about in the last episode. Like sometimes we feel like we're not good enough. And I'm like, but we are, because we're called to be people of influence. And if we're influencing people to be the best version of themselves, like, let's go out there and help people pivot into their next. Like that's what gets me excited about TPE, is like, hey, we just want to help you pivot into what's next for you and be the best person that you can possibly be.
And I think sometimes I think there's a certain level, and not to take this too spiritual, but I think there's a certain level of conviction that you have as a leader to not let those talents that you were given go to waste. I think a lot of times I see people who are in leadership in our restaurant or just in general, they're so talented and they don't realize that they have the talent, and they're letting that influence go to waste. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm sure they're using it in some form or another, but I just, one of the things that really compelled me to move towards the daily dose, not to dwell on that too much, but it was like, Alex, you're not going to be John Maxwell or Andy Stanley or Patrick Lencioni your first time getting in front of a microphone.
Mm-hmm.
There's this book that, your 10,000 hours, or this phrase that you got to put X amount of time into doing something until you come to some level of mastery. And so I said to myself, if I'm going to maximize my influence, I've got to put into action those things that I want to be influential in. And I'm just saying that to say to anybody that's out there, whatever that is for you, whatever you're wanting to embark upon and to invoke that level of influence, it's not going to happen overnight. You're going to have to put yourself in a position to be able to exercise that muscle, just like anybody. I mean, a lot of our episodes, we dwell on the topic of health. Anybody will tell you, if you're wanting to run a marathon, if you wake up tomorrow with the idea to say, I want to do a half marathon, a 5K, a 10K, or whatever, you're not just going to go out on a track and run those 26.2 miles or whatever, 26.1 miles or whatever it is day one. It's going to come as a result of calculated risk, like we talked about in the last episode, being committed, being disciplined, and to understand what you need to do to make that influence. Now, you might say, well, how does a 5K or a marathon or any of those things influence or influential? When people see you putting in that work to make that happen, that's going to influence them to be better. I see it in our restaurant all the time when we got one of your guys that you're coaching, Roderick. When he is dialed in, you should see the ripple effect that has on the other people that are around him in that circle. So much so, he started a running club last Sunday. They went out to the hike and bike here. He had about 10, 15 other team members out there running the 2.5 miles around the lap with him, because he identified something that he's passionate in, and he really leaned into it, and that motivated other people, that influenced other people to do those things. And so for me, I think for anybody who's out there listening, you've got to get to a place to where you are not afraid to influence people around you with the talents that you've been given. We're doing ourselves a disjustice. I don't mean to go on a tangent. You cut me off whenever you feel like it. But I think we are doing what our potential and the things that we are strong in and our strengths a disservice when we don't leverage them in a way to influence.
Yeah, no, I think you're so right. So I'm going to give us the closing exercise for this week, or for maybe even the second one for this week, is make a list of 5 close relationships you have. So whether it's a family member, somebody in your business, or somebody you work with, somebody at your church, a friend, and what does your current influence in their life look like? Like, write it down. What is my influence of, if I'm talking about Alex, like, how have I been a positive influence in Alex's life? I would even say go as far as to ask him, like, hey, have I been a positive influence in your life? Or what have I done that's influenced you to be the best version of you, Alex? Like, tell me what that is. Don't be afraid to go ask people. Like, that's actually, people get excited when you go and you ask them for feedback. So ask them for feedback. And are there any changes you need to make in order to have a deeper impact or influence on that relationship? So is it, Alex, that I need to spend more time with you? Like, hey, Alex, would you like for us to, every week for 30 minutes, let's sit down and have coffee? Or, hey, Alex, could I, send you the quote of the day that inspires me to be the best leader? If I send you that, like, would that help you in your leadership? Or, Alex, what if I connect you with somebody else? Like, I've got this leader in my business that I really feel like you could learn a lot from. hey, can I connect you with them? There's a ton of different ways that you can be a person of influence in somebody's life. And so I think write down 5 people, 5 close relationships you have, get feedback on your current influence, and then figure out, is there anything else that you can do to help influence them in a positive manner? And I really like what I said in that last part is like, it doesn't always have to be you. Like, I might not connect with Alex in a way that, you know, Ashley or Neff can connect with Alex. And I could say, hey, I can influence Neff to, like, you know, y'all get together and y'all figure some things out and y'all work together to push you to what's next. And so sometimes it's not even about you. Like, it can be like, hey, I know somebody that I feel like y'all would just be really great friends, or you would challenge each other, or I think they could be, you know, a mentor in your life. And I'm going to put you together. That's a person of influence, even though it's not you actually doing the legwork. And so I think if you could just sit down, take some time, write it out. I'm actually going to do this exercise myself because this is something that I haven't done in a while. And I think I have a lot of people in my life that I am an influence, like even my kids. Like, I want to write down, like, I really think my 16-year-old right now, like, that's a person that I could do a better job influencing. And so even going to him and saying, like, hey, Jackson, his name's Jackson, by the way, hey, Jackson, like, how can I be a better mom? Like, how can I influence you to love Jesus more, or to find the job of your dreams? Like, that's something we're talking about right now. It's like, where do you want to go? Do you want to go to college? Do you want to go to trade school? Like, how can I help push you into, or pivot you into that next? Like, I think that's a key phrase to use even with my own kids. So I'm going to do this exercise.
That's excellent, man. Thank you so much for joining me in this, Javonna. I definitely appreciate your leadership and your wisdom here. And thank you guys for tuning in to this episode. We really appreciate you guys tuning in week to week just to hear what we have to say on this content. Again, we're covering Craig Groeschel's Think Ahead. Get that book if you haven't gotten it already. We're well into the book, but it's not too late to catch up with us and keep up with us. So thank you guys so much. And until next time, TPE family. Peace.